well. Tom, first module, planning.
Yeah.
You know, it's an amazing module. I think personally it's the most important module. You know, knowing your numbers is really important. Every time I go and visit real estate agents, especially the ones that have been in business for a long time, know their numbers. They know the total territory. They know how many sales, the volume and houses and the value. They know the median price, they know tenure, and they know the sales they need and the type of GCI they're looking for. Tom, where do you see it important?
I think we clearly know that real estate is all about winning market share. To actually win market share, you need to actually find out how much share there's available in the first place. And then the second thing is you put in plan and action to actually win a percentage of market share. And for me, Joe, it's really clear that the best of the best, the top 1%, have got total clarity on what they need to be doing. And let's use an example. Say you want to earn $200,000.
Yeah.
And you're roughly in an office that pays a 50-50 split. You've worked out you've got to write 400 in GCI.
Yep.
Then you turn around and say, if I've got to write 400 in GCI, how many sales does that mean? If the average commission in your area is $10,000 a sale, that means you've got to do 40 sales. And then what you do is you work backwards and say, hey, if I've got a list to sell ratio of, say, 50%, for me to make 40 sales, I must list 80 because 50% of 80 equals 40. And then you move the next step, which is how many appraisals should you be going to get those 80 listings?
Now, this is where the data insights really come into play, because knowing the territory numbers is just not knowing how many houses or units inside that territory. It's knowing how many are in withdrawn listings, how many are in the tenure period that might be a sweet spot for you. And then you can work out your conversion rate on those, right? How about we start and we actually show you how to get these data points out and create a really good business plan. Let's show you.
So the first thing we're going to do is stake a territory. So we'll click on search and you'll see on the left hand side, save territories. So let's build a territory, and I'm going to go to the northern beaches of Sydney. Why wouldn't you? So the first thing is new territory. You get a Google interface. What I'm going to do is just zoom out a little bit, move across to the northern beaches, and now I'm going to start to zoom in. And I'm going to build a territory that basically goes from the lake here at Narrabeen all the way through this area. And it encompasses about 4 suburbs. And you can see, just position your map until you're quite comfortable that you can see the streets. So to stake your territory, I'm going to use the draw shape here. And I'm just going to be a little bit rough here, but as I said, you can be quite accurate. I'm going to come across here, bring myself right round the plateau and run along this road here. And once I click, I'm going to give that a name and call it Northern Beaches. And once I've done that, it'll save it. That's how easy it is to draw a territory. And as you can see, you can have multiple territories, 25 territories per login. We're now going to investigate and start to get some data. To view the territory, you simply just click on the name. So here we are, we have 10,000 records in the territory. Now what I'm going to do now is bring across a spreadsheet that actually helps us do the analysis. I'm going to make it available on the landing page, so it'll be a file that you can download. If you need some help, our coaches will give you a hand on using it. Basically, what I'm going to do now is just give it the same name, Northern Beaches. And the first thing I'm going to do is just record the number of properties. So we'll just flick back and you'll see that's a total property records, or the total universe in your territory. So that's 10942. Let's pop that in. We're going to now start to do some analysis on that particular territory. So let's start. I'm going to go to the sales history because what I'm looking for is what happened last financial year so we can make a comparison. So let's do that. In the last 6 months, it was $299. So I'm expecting around the 500 mark in the last financial year. So let's bring that back. July 2018, 1 to June, and we hit refine. I just want to know every single property that's sold inside there. So 800 sales are in that particular area. Let's just select all, and we're going to run a sales history report, and it's going to give us some important stats here. So let's have a look at the summary, and you'll start to see now houses, median, average, and so on. It's really amazing because you can now work out what beds and baths, what's the highest value that I got for a 4-bedroom in that area. So you can see these lowest, highest, the volume of sales, all that happens in one go. But you know what? I kind of like to really get to the nub of what's going on in the territory. And I want to be able to manipulate the data. So I'm going to use Excel to help me here. So I'm going to close this off. I've got it all selected and I'm simply going to export to CSV. Notice that I'm just exporting the key data points that I need. Okay, so that gives me now the ability to do the data counts really quite simply. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. And you know what? I'm going to pop it into my clever little calculator and I'm going to put it into my sales data tab. So what I've got now is the ability to filter this information. Let's have a look at the median. We know that there was 800 odd sales. What I'm going to do is just scroll down to around the 400 mark, and you can see here that the median for this area is around the 890 mark, 850 mark. So if we look at the total count of properties, and with Excel you can do that quite easily, I'm just going to go right through to the bottom, and it gives me my total count of sales. You'll see that that's 853. Around the 425 mark gives us our median. I'm going to call 850 for the median, and I'm just going to pop that in to the territory profile because it's an important part of you knowing your suburb. So the number of sales there we said was 853 sales. And this is really interesting because straight away we know that there's 10,000 records in that territory. So the turnover is quite high at 8%. So lots of activity in the area last year. So what we'll do is we'll now get the value of sales because this is what I call a white space. And the white space says, well, what's the total value of properties in this area? So I'm just going to sum that really quickly and we're going to pop that in. So once I've keyed that number in, we simply look at what the average commission, and reality says it might be 1.8 in this area. I'm actually going to put 2%, that tends to be, or 2.2 if we want to add the GST component in there. So the gross commission is $20 million. That tells us what the available revenue is. So if you had 100% of market share, you would be earning $20 million in that territory. So we start to build this profile and we know what the potential is. Now, some of the things that we want to do is start to create what our prospecting pool will be. We do that really simply by going into CoreLogic and doing our counts. We've got this beautiful prospector panel, which we're going to come back to in a little while, and I just simply want the counts for those suburbs that are in my territory. So we saw that Narrabeen was one of the suburbs, and we're going to run a search. Okay, so we have 19 withdrawn listings. So what I'm going to do is just pop that into my spreadsheet. At the bottom, I've got a prospector panel, which starts to count your pool. So I'm just going to put Narrabeen, and that'll start to give you your totals. Let's repeat. Chroma was my next one. Okay, so we've just finished counting up all of our withdrawn listings in the territory. Now what we want is a profile on the territory. We're going to start again with find leads. Now find leads is the tenure, and what we want is how many properties are inside that tenure trend. So we're going to do exactly the same as we did with withdrawn listings. Let's just show you what I mean. We'll pop into RP Professional, Prospector Panel, and now it's find leads. Now find leads has an algorithm that looks at the tenure trend and it gives you the properties that fall inside the tenure trend. We're going to just repeat each one of those suburbs. That's given us 91 properties that are more likely to move. So we'll pop that into the find leads, Narrabeen, 91, and we're just going to do those suburbs again. We've just finished the find leads, and in that tenure there's about 742. So we're going to just run a look at empty nesters. Now, the way I look at empty nesters is people that have had their properties for more than around that 20 to 22 years. Let's have a look at how we can bring up all the properties that were purchased, say, 20 to 22 years ago. So it's really simple. We just go into our territory again. Remember, we're just going to run the search, go to Save Territories, and bring up Northern Beaches again. We're just going to scroll down now to the settlement date, and we're just going to pick 1999, January 1st to 2001. So I'm giving myself a 2-year scope here. Hit the refine, and we'll get a count here now. So we know how many properties fall into that category, and there's 600 properties over that 2-year period. So let's pop that into our spreadsheet again, 604. So this is building now a profile of what's going on. Just again, in my territory, I need to know what's my potential name and direct marketing, like phone numbers and so on. So there's 5,814. Let's pop that in there as well. 5,814. So that's our profile, and you can see what I'm doing here. I know my total territory, I know the median, I know the number of sales that happened last year, so the market might go up or down, but it's not going to double as an example. I know the volume of sales, my total white space, what the average commission that the market is earning, and then the gross commission, which is $20 million. So what we're going to do now is have a look at our own profile. What did we do? This is all about setting goals to improve. So if you're a principal, you might put the number of sales agents. We don't need to because I'm a salesperson doing this for myself. The number of sales in the territory. Well, let's say I made 10 sales. You'll know this from your own work. And the value of that sales, I'm just going to use the median times 10. So that's $8 million. And the average commission I got was 1.8%, and that gives me my earnings in gross commissions, and your market share for that was 1% of the territory. That's our starting point, 1% of the territory. So now that you've got an idea of what you've earned, obviously you've got aspirations to grow. So if I go to the tab on the dig analysis, dig is data, insights and growth. In other words, you're using data to help you grow your business. We know that there are 159 withdrawn listings during the course of the year, and we know that at least 60% of listings will come back on the market. So that gives us about 95 that we can work with. Now, even at your 1%, I'm going to get a listing out of that, and that improves it by the one listing. The find leads, they come on the market, our stats say, at about 4 to 5% more than the original area. So we said the territory profile actually turns over at about 8%. If you use find leads, you're going to get a better strike rate, and we see it around 5. I've been a bit conservative. I've said 4% increase. Empty nesters, same type of environment. Working the market direct database on a regular basis. This is the big pool of your prospecting, and I've just used the standard turnover, and that gives us around 450, and I'm using your market share, and that gives us 5 listings. We're going to talk about improving your conversion rate and winning the listings, and we want to increase. So what I've done here, I've said I've done about 40 appraisals during the year. My current conversion based on that is 25%. I work on increasing my conversion to 5%, and that's an extra 2 listings. So you can see what I'm doing. Using data to influence people, we're going to actually improve by 3 listings, and that gives us a total of 13. What does that mean if you actually double what you're doing? And when we look at the return on investment to do all of this thing, it's substantial. We're talking about an increment of around $200,000, and we're talking about next year's revenue or GCI of $356,000. So we go from plodding along and around the bottom to being a really substantial player in the market, and you can see the market share. And we know when market share increases, it's a snowball effect, isn't it? Because the more you sell, the more activity, the more attraction you have, and the more clients will come to you.
So Tom, that took about half an hour to an hour to get all of those data points to help me set out a plan and really know what my territory is, what my market is, and what I need to do to get my GCI and my revenue. So where do you see the next steps?
Okay, now we're moving into the main part of real estate. The main part of real estate is execution, because Joe, ideation without execution equals delusions. And this is not what we're training our agents.
That's right, that's right. So how about we get stuck into module 2, which is the lead gen? And I think that's the most important one.
It's the lifeblood of real estate.
Absolutely.